What you are seeing is a symbol of faith for millions worldwide. The Vatican, which is seen as a place of worship, has over the years accumulated so many mysteries. Beneath all this worship and perception of holiness lies one particular dark tale involving money laundering, the Mafia, and an unsolved mystery buried within its walls. Our story begins with Banco Ambrosiano, which rose to power in the 1970s under Roberto Calvi. Calvi, ambitious and well-connected in the Vatican, was given the nickname God's Banker for his strong ties to the Vatican Bank, officially known as the Institute for the Works of Religion, in short, IOR.
"You can't run the church on Hail Marys,"
said Archbishop Paul McIncas, head of the Vatican Bank at the time, summarizing the Vatican's pragmatic approach to managing its vast financial interests. Calvi's Banco Ambrosiano and the Vatican Bank had a deep relationship, sharing control over accounts and investments. The Vatican Bank was later accused of using Banco Ambrosiano to funnel money through a network of offshore companies. According to reports, these offshore companies would soon play a role in one of Italy's biggest financial scandals. The Vatican Bank functioned as a sovereign institution, free from regulatory oversight, allowing it to operate with a level of secrecy uncommon in other banks. Calvi reportedly used this to his advantage, with allegations of moving funds for mysterious and sometimes dangerous clients.
Calvi knew too much. He had become a liability to his partners, both criminal and ecclesiastical,
wrote investigative journalist David Yallop in his book In God's Name, one of the most in-depth investigations into the Vatican's financial dealings. By 1982, Banco Ambrosiano was collapsing. An audit revealed a $1.3 billion shortfall, and investigations showed this money had disappeared into offshore accounts connected to shell companies. Italian public outrage grew as Corriere della Sera exposed the scandal. Calvi became the target of investigations, and his Vatican ties only deepened the mystery surrounding him. British journalist David Yallop wrote in God's Name,
"Calvi had become a liability."
At this point, a secret organization called Propaganda Deo, or P2, entered the picture, a Masonic lodge with high-level members in politics, business, and the military. P2 has been described as a state within a state. Its connections to Banco Ambrosiano became central to Italy's political and financial scandals. In his book, The Vatican at War, historian Philip Whelan described P2 as one of the most powerful and sinister groups in Italy, alleging that its influence extended across every layer of society. Calvi's association with P2 allegedly protected him while linking his bank deeper layers of crime and corruption. Newspapers labeled Licio Gelli, a prominent P2 member, as the puppet master, claiming he manipulated Calvi to launder money for P2 and the Mafia alike. As scrutiny mounted, Calvi fled Italy, and he was last seen alive in London in June 1982. Days later, his body was discovered hanging from Blackfriars Bridge, with bricks stuffed in his pockets.
"My father wasn't suicidal. He feared for his life and told us that he was in grave danger,"
his daughter said in an interview with The Independent. The circumstances surrounding Calvi's death led many to suspect foul play. His connection to P2 and the Mafia's alleged anger over missing funds fueled theories that his death was a warning or symbolic execution. Tommaso Buscetta, a high-ranking Mafia informant, said in a BBC documentary on Banco Ambrosiano,
"The Vatican was involved in Banco Ambrosiano, and so was the Mafia. Calvi tried to play both sides and paid the ultimate price."
Calvi's death has prompted various theories, with some claiming he planned to expose the Vatican's involvement in Banco Ambrosiano's collapse, while others suggested he'd caused the Mafia by mishandling their money. The placement of bricks in Calvi's pockets and the location of his death under Blackfriars Bridge, a location with Masonic connections, added to theories that his death was a ritualistic murder by P2 or the Mafia. Italian journalist Carlo Lucarelli in Criminale Italia remarked,
"The Vatican was protecting itself. Admitting guilt would have been devastating."
Following Calvi's death, the Vatican faced mounting scrutiny but maintained its distance. In 1984, the Vatican Bank agreed to pay $250 million to Banco Ambrosiano's creditors, while denying any wrongdoing. The Vatican's official statement read that the payment was a gesture of goodwill to help resolve a difficult situation, without acknowledging guilt. This payment was received by some as hush money. Observers such as historian Gerald Posner argued that the Vatican was shielding itself from further investigation into its financial practices. The Banco Ambrosiano scandal has become one of the darkest financial episodes in Italian history. The death of Roberto Calvi, the Vatican's payments, and the alleged links to organized crime have left an indelible mark. Gerald Posner in God's Bankers writes,
"The Vatican's role in the scandal remains shrouded in secrecy. It's a story of money, power, and faith, where the lines between good and evil blur."
This story serves as a warning about the unchecked power of unregulated financial institutions and the consequences that follow when faith and power intertwine with crime. Does the Vatican still hold secrets from this dark chapter? And will we ever learn the full truth of the Banco Ambrosiano scandal? For now, the shadows remain. Money, like water, flows where it is least hindered. In the end, only the truth holds the power to stop it. In the 1980s, crime, corruption, and whispers of shadowy alliances haunted the streets of Rome. One of the most shocking connections involved Enrico de Pedis, the notorious leader of the Banda dela Magliana. Remarkably, de Pedis, a mob boss, was buried in the hallowed grounds of Sant Apollinare Basilica near the Vatican. For years, this burial has puzzled the public. Italian newspapers first reported the gangster's interment here in the 1990s, sparking outrage. How did a mobster gain such an honor, typically reserved for devout Catholics? According to Antonio Mancini, a former member of the Magliana gang, the answer is both chilling and calculated. Mancini explained,
De Pedis was given that burial as a reward for keeping the gang from going after the Vatican's interest in the 1980s.
In addition to his criminal empire, De Pedis reportedly used his influence to shield the Vatican from his gang's activities. Allegedly, his work in controlling the Magliana gang to protect the church assets earned him the Vatican's gratitude, an exchange that ultimately led to his burial within a basilica. During this period, the Vatican Bank faced scandals of its own. The church's financial dealings were under scrutiny, especially due to connections with Banco Ambrosiano, managed by Roberto Calvi, who was later found dead in London. Investigative reports indicated that the Magliana gang had funneled money through these institutions, allegedly in collaboration with Vatican insiders. The Vatican's relationship with De Pedis may have had deeper motives. Italian author and journalist Giancarlo Capaldo, in interviews with La Repubblica, said,
"The Vatican was well aware of De Pedis' influence in Rome, and he acted as a mediator between the church and the criminal underworld."
This implied that De Pedis was more than a criminal. He was, as some believe, an essential bridge between these two worlds. Another mystery deepens the intrigue: the case of Emanuela Orlandi. In 1983, Emanuela, a 15-year-old Vatican citizen, vanished, sparking one of Italy's longest-running unsolved cases. Some sources, including De Pedis' former associates, hinted that the Magliana gang may have kidnapped Orlandi as leverage against the Vatican during a financial dispute. Author David Yallop reported,
There was reason to believe Orlandi's disappearance was a message to the Vatican.
In 2012, after years of public outcry, Italian police exhumed De Pedis' body to investigate any links to the Orlandi case. To everyone's shock, the tomb contained other bones, but no solid evidence emerged connecting De Pedis to Emanuela's disappearance.
The mystery remains unsolved.
Vatican analyst Marco Politi wrote,
But the exhumation only intensified public suspicion around De Pedis' Vatican connections.
When the public learned of De Pedis' burial in such a sacred space, outrage erupted. A Vatican spokesperson at the time offered a controversial defense, claiming that De Pedis had repented and made significant charitable contributions to the church. But this explanation did little to quell suspicions. Journalist Sandro Contenta of The Star commented,
For many, it was shocking that the Vatican will overlook De Pedis' bloody history in favor of his money.
Was Enrico de Pedis just a repentant sinner, or was his burial a reward for services rendered to the Vatican? As new information comes to light, the story of Enrico de Pedis continues to blur the lines between sacred and profane. The intrigue surrounding his burial and the Vatican's alleged involvement with organized crime remains one of Italy's most haunting mysteries. Rome's St. Apollonar Basilica is an unusual final resting place, not just for saints, but, shockingly, for a notorious mob boss. Enrico de Pedis, once a leader of Rome's feared Banda dela Magliana, was laid to rest here in 1990. Many believe his burial in this sacred ground was more than a mark of religious devotion. They suspect it was part of a dark deal tied to the disappearance of a young Vatican resident, Emanuela Orlandi. Enrico de Pedis, known on the streets as Renatino, was a prominent figure in the Banda dela Magliana, a gang with operations extending from drug trafficking to political collusion. His influence ran deep right into the heart of the Vatican. La Repubblica journalist Marco Ansaldo once said,
De Pedis was more than a mobster. He had connections that could shake the foundation of Italian society.
On June 22, 1983, 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi vanished after leaving her home within Vatican City to attend a music lesson in Rome. Her sudden disappearance turned into one of Italy's most baffling mysteries, with connections reaching from the streets of Rome to the Vatican's inner circles. Pietro Orlandi, her brother, told CNN,
I've been looking for answers for over 3 decades, and I feel the truth is right there in the Vatican, but they won't open the door to it.
In 1990, Enrico de Pedis was assassinated, a classic mob hit. What shocked the public wasn't just his death, but his final resting place. De Pedis was buried in the St. Apollonar Basilica, a decision that outraged many. Pietro Orlandi remarked,
It was a slap in the face to everyone touched by Emanuela's case to think that a criminal like him was laid to rest in such a holy site.
The church explained that De Pedis had done many acts of charity, but many, like journalist Andrea Purgatori, dismissed this as a cover story. Purgatori added,
Charity, or was it hush money?
In 2005, an anonymous caller phoned an Italian television show about unsolved mysteries. The caller, with an unsettling calmness, suggested,
If you want to find Emanuela, look inside the tomb of De Pedis.
This cryptic message revived interest in the theory that Orlandi's kidnapping and De Pedis' burial were intertwined. The Daily Beast reported that officials had to confront the whispered legend that De Pedis' tomb held secrets beyond his own body. In 2012, nearly 30 years after Orlandi's disappearance, the Vatican finally permitted authorities to open De Pedis' tomb. Father Federico Lombardi, a Vatican spokesperson, stated,
"The Vatican has always been open to assisting with this investigation. Exhuming the tomb is a positive step."
As police descended on St. Apollonae, Orlandi's brother, Pietro, expressed hope but also skepticism.
"The truth,"
he said,
"lies somewhere in those walls, but will we ever see it?"
The tomb's exhumation, however, yielded no answers. Medical experts confirmed the presence of De Pedis' body and nearby bones, but no signs of Emanuela Orlandi. According to insiders and conspiracy theorists, De Pedis' burial was payment for a favor, the return of a debt owed to the Banda, dela Magliana. Journalist Emiliano Fittipaldi, an expert on Vatican scandals, explained that the gang allegedly kidnapped Orlandi to pressure the Vatican Bank, then run by Archbishop Paul McKinkas, to repay funds it had borrowed.
De Pedis was no stranger to deals.
Fittipaldi noted,
In exchange for his burial, he may have kept some explosive secrets to himself, secrets that involve the Vatican's darkest dealings with organized crime.
Despite the exhumation, Pietro Orlandi remains vocal about his suspicion that a cover-up persists. In an interview, he stated,
"They know exactly what happened to Emanuela, and it's not just about the Mafia. It's about a system of silence that reaches into the Vatican itself."
Criticizing the church's reluctance to release files, he argued,
"By refusing to reveal the truth, they are choosing their image over justice."
Many Italians agree, seeing the case as a testament to the Vatican's power to bury the truth, sometimes literally. As the investigation continues to stall, Italy remains captivated by the mystery of Emanuela Orlandi. Was De Pedis' burial simply an acknowledgement of his charity, as the church claimed, or was it a strategic act, part of a hidden agreement between powerful institutions and a man whose silence was worth more than any confession? Marco Ansaldo from La Repubblica perhaps summarized it the best.
This story is not just about a missing gun. It's about how much power can buy in silence and how far-reaching that silence can be.
Emanuela Orlandi's story remains a haunting reminder of the power dynamics that shape our world. A story where faith, crime, and secrecy converge. And as long as her family searches for the truth, the shadow of Enrico de Pedis' tomb looms over the Vatican, a silent monument to questions that refuse to be laid to rest. For centuries, the Vatican has been a fortress of faith, a place where millions seek spiritual solace and guidance. But beneath the holy facade, a shadow lurks, a tangled web of corruption, financial scandal, and even alleged mafia connections. The recent revelations have exposed the Vatican's deep struggles with integrity, leaving one crucial question hanging in the air. Can Pope Francis and his reformers pull the church back from the brink? The roots of Vatican corruption stretch back decades. In the 1980s, the Banco Ambrosiano scandal rocked the Catholic world, leading to the mysterious death of banker Roberto Calvi, found hanging under London Bridge, his pockets stuffed with bricks. Dubbed God's banker, Calvi's tragic end was a harbinger of the Vatican's long-standing entanglements with Italy's criminal underworld. Fast forward to today, and we find ourselves in the middle of a new storm, with the same old patterns re-emerging. In recent years, Italian investigators uncovered what they believe is a modern-day Trojan horse, a trail of secretive financial transactions that may link certain high-ranking Vatican officials to organized crime networks. Judge Giuseppe Pignatone, who once fought against Mafia corruption in Italy and now oversees Vatican criminal proceedings, became a central figure. As Pigantone defended his record, he stated,
"I am committed to contributing within the limits of my abilities towards investigative efforts of the State Attorney's Office of Caltanissetta,"
or in brackets, Pila Catholic. Yet for many, the Vatican's connection to organized crime remains shrouded in mystery. Pope Francis, elected in 2013, vowed to reform the Vatican's finances and rid the church of corruption. In his own words, he called for a poor church for the poor, an institution free from greed and scandal. And yet, despite years of effort, financial corruption has proven resilient. One key incident, the notorious London property deal, involved an investment in luxury apartments that left the Vatican swindled by investors. Behind the scenes, Pope Francis' push for transparency has sparked internal power struggles. The resignation of Vatican financial watchdog Rein Bruhalt, following a dramatic police raid on Vatican's offices, marked a significant setback. According to Bruhalt,
"The need for financial transparency is essential, but it's clear that the road ahead will be treacherous."
As further evidence of the challenge, Juan Antonio Guerrero Alves, head of Secretariat for the Economy, admitted that internal factions actively resist transparency efforts. In his words,
"The Vatican's financial system needs reform, but there are entrenched interests that fear the light of transparency."
One of the most high-profile figures implicated is Cardinal Giovanni Angelo Bessiu. Once a trusted aide to Pope Francis, Bessiu was accused of embezzlement in connection with the London property deal and for funneling Vatican funds to businesses managed by family members. Bessiu fired back publicly, insisting,
"I am the victim of a conspiracy aimed at destroying my reputation."
Yet his resignation in 2020 left a bitter mark on Vatican leadership. More recently, the arrest of Cecilia Marogna, often referred to as the Lady of the Vatican, added another layer of intrigue. Marogna, allegedly close to Bessiu, received hundreds of thousands of euros supposedly intended for humanitarian projects. Italian prosecutors now claim the funds may have been used for luxury shopping.
"The Vatican is like a dark forest,"
An insider noted.
"The closer you get, the more tangled and confusing it becomes."
Each scandal chips away at the Vatican's credibility, casting shadows over its moral authority. Faithful Catholics are left wondering, how can the Church preach about moral integrity while being riddled with financial scandal? Michael Winters of the National Catholic Reporter explained the Vatican's dilemma succinctly.
"Trying to reform the Vatican must be like living with an alcoholic. You want to be supportive without being an enabler. And the most loving thing you can do is say no."
Winter's stark analogy paints a vivid picture of the depth of this crisis. Pope Francis' vow for a poor church for the poor seems increasingly out of reach. Pope Francis' mission to reform Vatican finances now hangs in a delicate balance. The stakes are high. Some insiders suggest the Pope may need to make an unprecedented decision to invite outside experts and impose a rigid system of accountability, risking internal backlash. For Pope Francis, rooting out of this corruption is a fight not only for the Church but for the future of the faith. One senior Vatican official put it bluntly,
"If the Holy See doesn't embrace transparency, it risks losing its influence and moral authority in a rapidly changing world."
Only time will tell if these efforts can purge the Church of its past sins and restore trust in one of the world's oldest institutions. The Vatican stands at a crossroads, its legacy overshadowed by scandal, its mission questioned. Will Pope Francis' reform efforts succeed, or will corruption prove too deeply embedded? For the millions who look to the Vatican for spiritual guidance, the answer may determine the future of their faith.